West Hamburg.
Okay, we are now live.
Right, I can start, yes?
Yes.
Right, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another session in our Edgware United Synagogue Adult Education Programme, the third in a row to be presented by one of our own members. Edgware is located in the London Borough of Barnet, the largest borough in London by population, and it is continuing to grow. Tonight, Steve Birley is going to be speaking about 40 years policing the Jewish community in Barnet. He has been a volunteer police officer, special constable, for over 40 years, the majority of service in Barnet. He has recently moved to Camden, having been promoted to special inspector. Specials have the same powers and carry out the same duties as regular police officers, but don't get paid. He has in the past been featured in the Jewish Chronicle and Homodia. Awarded a Borough Commander's Commendation and an award from Barnet Council, as well as letters of appreciation, his numerous stories, both good and not so good, about policing the community in Barnet. I'm sure that there are some stories which could only apply to the Jewish community. I heard one story of a wife accompanied by her next door neighbour who went to the police station reporting that her husband was missing. She was asked to describe him. He's 30 years old, over 6 foot tall, is dark and handsome and weighs 12 stone and is kind to everyone. The next door neighbour was amazed at the description. She said, "Your husband is 5'2", overweight, totally bald and has offended everyone." The wife replied, "Yes, but who wants him back?" Steve was one of the go-to officers for all things Jewish when at Colindale, especially when it came to Purim, Yom Tov and Hanukkah. When not involved in his policing duties, he is the business development manager for a company which is a major supplier of emergency medical supplies to the blue light sector, Ministry of Defence, public and private sectors. He holds a bachelor's degree in biochemistry. After Steve has given his presentation, there will be an opportunity to ask questions. And as usual, if you wish to participate at that time, please raise your virtual hand.
Okay.
Yep.
In 1919, Fred Lee and Charles Collins wrote a musical song which was made famous by Mary Lloyd. It went like this. Feel free to join in. My old man said, follow the van and don't dilly-dally on the way. Off with the van with me own packed in it. I walked behind with me old cottle in it. I dillied and dallied and dillied, lost me way and don't know where to roam. Well, you can't trust a special like the old-time coppers when you can't find your way home. Thanks for the introduction. The reason I started with that is that specials have been around since 1831, and I don't mean 6:30. What I'm going to do here is explain my role, duties, and give you some examples of policing Barnet Borough for the last 40 years, and then you can ask questions at the end. I joined in 1980 and was sworn in after initial training was based at Hendon Police Station, which is still now a building site. I was promoted to sergeant in 1986, and when Hendon closed down, I moved to West Hendon and subsequently Colindale, all within Barnet. Now, some of them, should we say more mature members, may remember that Wednesday, the 29th of July was a bank holiday, and that was my first duty. Just to remind you, that was a wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana uptown. I was on duty from 2 a.m. until 6 p.m. My position was in the Strand, and when the carriage passed, all I could think of was that her dress looked creased. We then moved to Westminster Bridge, and I was informed sometime later that I was seen on TV in Canada, who of course were filming the wedding like everybody else. Obviously, as you know, there's a large Jewish population in Barnet, and policing, or being a police officer, has not been considered a job for a nice Jewish boy. However, you will be surprised how many Jews there are within the Met. Jewish Police Association has around 300 members from all areas of policing, not just police officers, chief inspectors, scene of crimes, fingerprint, everything, including police staff. We normally hold the Hanukkah party at Scotland Yard, where the commissioner attends, although last year was virtual. Obviously, it's not just your Jewish police association, there's quite varied police associations, Italian, Muslim, Christian, and so on. And I feel now that it's much better being a Jewish police officer than it was 30 years ago. I know there are more members, are Jewish members, who are not members of the JPA. On Sunday, the 31st of October, 1999, I received a call that I was needed on duty as Lord Jakobowitz died, and there was a hesped at Hendon Shaw before the coffin was blue lighted to Heathrow and then on to Israel for burial. I grew up in Hendon and had a mitzvah at Hendon Shaw. Of the 9 police officers on duty, 6 were Jewish, and of that, 6 of the total police officers were specials. As I knew the Shaw and many of the community, I was asked to go in and try and make way for the coffin so that it could get to Heathrow on time and didn't get stuck in traffic. As I said, I grew up in Hendon, so I stood at the entrance with my yellow high-vis and thought, should I leave my hat on or put on a kippah? Nah, I'll leave the hat on and just move the crowds out of the way. The following Friday evening, I was reading the JC, in which Jenny Fraser at the time said, and I quote, "In the midst of all the black coats and hats, the police officer stood out in his high-vis, not sure whether to remove his hat in the synagogue." So on the Monday, I rang JC and spoke to Jenny. "How do you know the police officer wasn't Jewish?" I just assumed. And I told her I was that officer, and the following week she printed a very nice article about the Jewish specials. That just goes to show that the assumption is you don't get Jewish police officers. On another occasion, we were on duty for a safer terror procession from a house in Hendon to a local shul. Half the people knew me, and someone came up and asked if I wanted Hagba. Well, come on, you never turn down a mitzvah, especially if you're not paying for it. So again, in full uniform with a high-vis on, I had Hagba and was getting ready to go outside when a man came up to me, put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Tell me, officer, are you Jewish?" He was deadly serious. It did not occur to him that I knew what to do. And why would you give such a mitzvah to someone who isn't Jewish? It's a perception that Jews can't be police officers, or police officers are not Jewish. And a few years later, I was a member of Kenton Shaw, and I met Rabbi Znaimer, another Sefer Torah dedication. He had a quiet word with someone, and I was asked to write a letter in full uniform. You know, you hold the quill over the sofa's arm. Again, someone asked in Yiddish if I was Jewish. And in this occasion, I ended up in Hamadir as, and I quote, the long arm of the law. Just goes to show not a job for a nice Jewish boy or girl, although at Colindale Police Office Station, there are enough Jewish officers to form a minion. Although they work on different teams and shift patterns, some actually wear their kippah on duty. I personally don't believe the Met is inherently racist, though there are probably a few bad apples, like in any profession. The mix now is black, white, Asian, East European, African, and I've worked with many of them, and it's quite interesting now that there's a bigger mix of what I think is termed black and ethnic minorities within the special constabulary than within the regular police. And we get on, everybody, we get on very, very well. Over the years, I've got to know many of the community, and as Nathan said, I would work with the senior management over Rosh Hashanah and what they call Purim. They know exactly what's going on. They know all the bits and pieces, especially poor when people get inebriated and chicker. We even had, on one occasion, a Hebrew-speaking special and had to arrest a young lady in Golders Green on a warrant. It was a from lady, as it happens. And I made sure that the arresting officer was female, so that no male actually laid hands on her. And the 2 female officers accompanied her into custody. And the Israeli-speaking officer was able to explain to the father, because she's about 23, 24, what was going on. Hanukkah quite often occurs around Christmas time. And I've given up counting how many times I've policed the lighting of the Hanukkah at Golders Green Station. Average tends to sort of run that. I must say, of course, donuts did help as well. And it's quite interesting, speaking of Christmas, some years ago with political correctness was Ian thing. Not to upset anyone else, it was the dawn of the woke era. There was a thing about Christmas decorations and not offending anyone else. Anyway, I was in the specials office of Colindale Police Station with a very good friend and fellow special who was a Hindu, came with a big bag of seasonal decorations. And we decided to put them up. You know, you had the streamers and the tents and all pieces, nothing religious, obviously. We had the best decorated office that year. And if anyone asked who had done it, the answer was, oh, the Jew and the Hindu. The Saturday night before Rosh Hashanah, I was on duty walking on the beat in Hendon, Queens Road and Brent Street at about 11:45 p.m. Car with 3 young Jewish women parked right on the junction in get out. The driver comes up to me and says, "Officer, can I park here?" I said, "You can park where you want." So she locked the car, and as she walked off, I said, "But you are causing an obstruction, you may be towed away." And very hurriedly, she says, "But my brother is a cantor in the local synagogue, and there's a special service tonight." "Madam," I said, "he may be the local chazan in the shul, but I say selichas before shacharis. That still doesn't mean you can park there." The look on her face when I said that was priceless, as if to say, did I actually hear what he said? He looked at me, looked at the car, without a word, parked further up. At this point, the 2 other women in the car were absolutely sticking themselves on that. Nobody actually asked, "Are you Jewish?" They just assumed. I've seen most of the royal family and was chatting to the police at Buckingham Palace on one occasion. Obviously, I can't tell you what was said, otherwise I'd have to shoot you all. It was quite interesting what goes on behind those gates there. I don't know if any of you are here from America, but while outside Buckingham Palace on a Sunday for changing of the guard, because that's a time when all the tourists come and take their pictures, a woman comes up to me, and I won't do the New York accent, "Excuse me, officer, how many blocks to Hyde Park Corner?" I pointed to Constitution Hill. "It's just up there, madam." "Yeah, but how many blocks is it?" "It's about a 12-minute walk." "But how many blocks?" "It's about half a mile." "Yeah, but how many blocks is that?" "4. I just thought of a number. "Gee, thanks," and off she went. I have no idea how big a block is, and I'm sure she got there, and whether it was or wasn't. And talking about Americans, in central London, a more mature American lady came up to me. She was lost. She had the key of her hotel on a big, like a wooden piece of wood, you know, so she could get in and out. And she said, "Excuse me, how do I get back to my hotel?" "What's the name of your hotel, madam?" "I can't remember, but a big red bus passes outside." It could still be there for all I know, I have no idea. Being based in Barnet meant I was on duty in the 80s for the local and general elections. Long duties, but experience which will never be repeated, is this was the counting location at Hendon Town Hall in the Boroughs for Margaret Thatcher. Whilst outside the town hall and with all security, a young lady came up to me to ask what was going on and why so many police. So I explained what was happening, and she said she lived locally, giving her address, and that her boyfriend was away for 6 months. And what time did I finish our shift? I won't go into what she said. Next, suffice to say that I did decline. Unfortunately, Hendon, Golders Green, and Edgware may have a high Jewish population, but we are no different from the general populace. I was on duty with another Jewish officer who's since retired, and we were talking about Jews and what's going on. We were sitting parked in the van in Golders Green Road, and he pointed out various Jewish people, what they'd been arrested or charged with. It was definitely an eye-opener. Very interesting. We have incidents of domestic violence, theft, dishonesty within the community. And boy, when it comes to driving offences, then we of Jews excel in that area. Many of these don't make the headlines. As I said earlier, the Jewish Police Association, the JPA, has worked closely with the Met in how to deal with from Jews. Things like female officers not allowed to arrest male suspects and vice versa. What happens if someone needs to be arrested on Friday or Yom Tov? What about kosher food in custody? And so on. And we have been asked these questions. It's quite interesting, sort of, that now, at the start of Yom Noa'im, normally a presentation goes around about what it's all about and how it can help the Jewish community. We get one for Diwali, we get one for Ramadan. So the whole idea of all Jews or all police officers knowing about the different religions, which shouldn't have happened a long time ago, is much more tolerated, much more sort of in vogue, I suppose. I mean, some years ago, I stopped a car and reported the driver, a Haredi man from Stamford Hill, for driving a vehicle in dangerous condition, and it went to court. He was found guilty, and the magistrate imposed a fine of a few £100 and points on his licence. A man, just call him Mr. Cohen, with his payers and his white shirt, no tie, of course, asked if he could pay at the end of the month, as he had other bills to pay. The magistrate then said, "Mr. Cohen, this is a court of law, and it is a serious offence for which you've been fined. Do you have a checkbook with you?" I said it was a long time ago. To which he answered, "Yes." "Then you will go with this man," pointing out the clerk of the court, "and pay the fine, and your other bills will just have to wait." Having grown up, as I said earlier, in Hendon, my family were friendly with the magistrate at Riley Close. My sister and their older daughter knew each other and so on. A few years after I joined the police, I was at Hendon Magistrates Court in front of the same magistrate. Obviously, I didn't know this when I got called in. I was asked to read the verbatim of conversation with the accused. We write these in the first person. Not I asked him if he was the driver and he replied he was, but "Were you the driver of vehicle ABC 123B? He replied, "Yes, I was." However, bearing in mind I had grown up with the magistrate's family, we'd been to their house on a Shabbos afternoon in summer, the language is very colourful and very blue, as you can imagine. I had to look at my notes because if I'd looked at the magistrate, I probably would have either started laughing or gone bright red. On another occasion, while training new officers, as a sergeant, I used to take vans out on a Sunday with new officers. And as far as traffic is concerned, Golders Green, Temple Fortune it's like sort of the pot at the end of the rainbow. It's great. We stopped the car of a Jewish man not wearing a seatbelt, and a ticket was duly issued. The driver recognised me from Hasmonean days where we went to school. The next week, Denise and I were at a bar mitzvah. Yeah, as you're probably ahead of me here, and he should be sitting on the same table that the man we issued the ticket to. I mean, he took it in good stead, but this is a problem when you work with Jews in the same area. Speaking of simchas, what I would say to anybody, especially these days, is not to drink and drive after the simcha. Although there's always a don't drink and drive campaign at Christmas, most of my drink drives have been in the summer months, when it's warm and people with their friends enjoying themselves. I will keep this light-hearted, and I won't go into detail about the consequences of drinking and driving or not wearing a seatbelt. But I have seen on quite a few occasions what happens. The most frustrating thing is that many motorists don't think they've done anything wrong. Like, "You've ruined my life, I've got a kid." Well, I can pour the alcohol down, you can get in the car and drive. On a lighter note, it was a very busy Saturday night. Could have even been a full moon, I don't know. And units are getting diverted to more serious calls. There are stabbings, fights, pub fights, everything. You know, in fact, a car would go to one and get diverted to somewhere else, and control comes over the radio. Any units free to attend and report theft from such and such fish and chip shop on West End and Broadway. 2 males have run in and grabbed a jar of onions from the counter and run off. Yes, Sierra November 81 will attend. Do you have a description? Bearing in mind it was a very busy evening, and the reply was, "Yes, white, round and in vinegar." At least to break the tension of a busy night shift. A volunteer police officer, or special as we've already mentioned, once trained, will come across the same scenarios in their paid regular colleagues. My first fatal crash was in a Ferrari Testarossa with the engine in the back that crashed and caught fire. And I ended up in the ambulance with the bodies going to Northwick Park. I also returned to coroner's court. Excuse me. Now we have much more support following these types of incidents. The Met takes officer welfare and mental health very seriously, but there is still some way to go. We have mental health champions, we have occupational health, we have people we can talk to. In fact, if there is a serious incident or something's happened that's traumatic, then the duty officer will normally email everybody on that and say, do they want to talk? Are they okay? Can we debrief it? I've lost count of the number of road traffic collisions reported over the past 40 years, from minor bumps to overturned vehicles to serious injury. I've also organised and run numerous traffic operations, some involving 20 or more specials, traffic units, border force, etc. On average, we end up seizing anywhere between 5 and 10 vehicles per operation, sometimes more. Mainly no insurance or license, but that also includes people who were wanted, offensive weapons and all sorts of squad driver on one occasion. I was talking to somebody on one occasion about the fact that we just stopped the vehicle as we can, and he didn't appear to have insurance. So I said, well, can't you get insurance now? Look, we'll have to, I appreciate where you live up north, but we don't have to take the car for you for getting insurance now. He says, my agent deals with that. And I said, oh, what do you do? He says, I'm a footballer. Well, I watch football, but I'm not that keen. So while my colleague was dealing with him, I went to check, looked at Google, and yeah, he was a prime scorer for the Premier League in the top half. It's only a couple of years ago. We tried everything we could, but in the end, the car was seized. I always have a little laugh with someone I stopped who's obviously Jewish. During lockdown, when I was in Camden, I stopped a car taking people to King's Cross Station, just after Pesach. When asked where they were going, they replied to Gateshead. Oh, you're going back to Yeshiva after Pesach then? The usual look is first, did I hear right? And the second is confusion. After all, is he Jewish? How would he know? But nobody actually says it. I've only in 40 years had one person say to me, are you? Am I what, madam? You know. No, I don't. Are you Jewish? Yes. But everyone just looks and thinks, I don't know. They assume. I mean, Temple Fortune is full of Jews, as we know. And right in the middle is Marks and Spencer's food hall. During an attempted armed robbery, we were first on scene. Because of what happened, I actually closed the store from 11:30 a.m. till about 1:30, 2 o'clock p.m., right lunchtime. I was not popular with those who wanted to do their shopping and couldn't understand why I couldn't let them in. If you're driving out and you see a police officer standing near police tape across the road, or a police car sideways blocking the road, please don't ask if you can just go down the road, or ask, is it closed? Or try and drive right up to the tape and expect it to magically open like Thunderbirds. The road is closed for a reason. Please don't ask what it is, because half the time the officers don't know we're so far away from it. And even if we did, we couldn't tell you the details. This happened once when I was doing the Remembrance Parade from Edgware, as Edgware Shore goes, into near the Aviv. I had a big white van parked across the road sideways, so the traffic coming up the A5 to the traffic lights couldn't go anywhere. I'm standing by the van, and a woman drove over the traffic lights and came up with about a foot of me. Oh, I want to go up there. Well, no, madam, that's why there's a van across it. It does amaze me sometimes. Denise and I were out one evening. She was driving, excuse me, and we approached a roundabout. I was in the passenger seat and I noticed the car in the left of the lane, a young girl holding a large doll on her lap. I thought, oh, the doll moved, and I realized she was holding a baby in the front passenger seat with no seatbelt. I was actually mortified, but I couldn't do anything at that stage because it all had driven off. Following week, this was still on my mind. Walking in Golders Green on duty, I saw a people carrier, as you would, coming towards me, and the mother in the front passenger seat was holding a baby. I got in the road, stopped the car, and went over. However, it wasn't a baby she was holding. There was a polystyrene head with a shuttle on it. Well, hang on, it looked like a baby to me from about 100 yards away. When I got back to the van, for the rest of the shift, it was hair-raising experience, letting your hair down, parting of the waves, whatever. This has happened to me, believe it or not, on 3 separate occasions. Like what I thought was a baby happened to be a polystyrene shuttle head. Some years ago, I know we're talking about Barnet, I lived in Belmont. And on one Saturday night around 1 a.m, we stopped a young girl driving a bit like a boy racer, you know the term, in Mill Hill. Having told her off, we said we could either write a ticket or call her parents. She said, call my parents. On Sukkot, about 2-3 weeks later, I was insured, and the woman came up to me. I don't know the woman, but obviously she must have found out from somewhere and said, it was you that stopped my daughter. My first thoughts were, oh no, what have I done now? She carried on and thanked me so much. They were waiting for her when she got home because we did ring. And the daughter's first words were, they didn't ring, did they? They managed to explain she was lucky because it could have been far worse. And after that, she was starting to drive better. I mean, you know, I didn't come down the last rain shower, and there's a lot that goes on that we see or not see. And people think that we don't know what we're talking about. Stopped a car once with a headlight out, top of the range. I think it's BMW or Merc. And just spoke to the driver, do you realise your headlight's out? This is just before Christmas, we're looking at drink drivers, I said. And he says, oh, I didn't realise. I said, right, sir, tomorrow I'm going to ring out BMW and say there's a software issue. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, a car of this type, when you turn your engine on, and with all your warning lights, you would have had a warning light to say you had a bulb failure. Oh, yeah, I was going to get it fixed tomorrow. You know, we've been there, we've done it, we've seen it. Don't try and get the kid up. As I mentioned, I have policed I've policed Hendon in the boroughs for Ajax, I've policed Golders Green, and I've policed Edgware. And it's interesting listening to the Salvation Army playing Adona Lom on those occasions. In all the years I've been doing this, yes, we've had some hair-raising scenarios. I've been sworn at and abused and all sorts of stuff by people, especially when you arrest them. I bet you get paid more for this. Listen, mate, I do this for nothing. I'm a volunteer and you're still nicked. And they don't like that at all. I've only ever had one complaint against me who accused me of picking on him because he was Jewish. It had nothing to do with the fact that we stopped him in Golders Green Road because he was driving whilst using his mobile. Nice Jewish man as well. I've given numerous talks to people on crime prevention, staying safe, what to do in an emergency, etc. Both my wife and daughter work in Jewish schools and asked me to speak to the nursery or to 6-year-olds. Believe it or not, that's terrifying. So my daughter Nicole printed a lot of pictures of police cars, dogs, horses, and wrote messages on the back like, this is a police car, it goes Nina, Nina. Believe me, it was fun, but not something I would again want to do in a hurry. I mean, give me a good old Saturday night pub fight, at least I know where I stand with those. With kids, is almost impossible. Talking about dogs and horses, why don't the police use cats or lions with the little girl's comment? How do you answer that one? Police officers are never off duty. And whilst driving along Woodcock Hill in Kenton after a business meeting, so I'm wearing a suit, I saw a car which appeared to have reversed into a brick wall. So I stopped to see if I could help. Apparently, a large dumper truck had driven up the centre of Woodcock Hill, forcing the car to reverse. He'd lost it and ended up with the rear of the vehicle embedded in the wall. Somebody was on the phone and said, you're calling the police? Can I have the phone, please? And there's a way you do things, like you give a description. You start with white, black, whatever. How tall was he? Clean shaving? What was he wearing? Which direction, etc., etc. And then I'm on the phone and I said, yeah, do you belong to the AA? No. Oh, I see. No. Front list, driver unable to nominate. There's all sort of the jargon that we use. And then the driver said to me, you know a lot about the police. And I thought, if I say I was a special or police officer, he would have wanted my details, even though I didn't see anything as a witness. I said, yeah, I watched the bill a lot, and left it at that. I mean, it's amazing how many times I've been driving on the motorway on a main road and seen an accident or collision, as we call it, and rang the police, and the call handler's comments. I was the only one to ring up, and I'm quite amazed the collision didn't happen literally in front of me. I will always stop to see if they need help. So I'm first aid trained, trauma trained. I won't take videos or photos, and if everything's okay, I'll leave the scene. In Hendon once, I came across a young man, probably about 18 or 20, having an epileptic fit. So I stopped the car. There's about 7 or 8 people all standing around him. And I said, has anyone called the ambulance? Complete blank on all their faces. So I said, right, do you have a phone? Pointing to one of them, nodded, right. And I actually say, I don't say call 999. I say, right, call 999, ask for the ambulance, tell them this, da, 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 da. Once the ambulance turns up, I tell them what I've seen, and off I go. I mean, in fact, only last week, there was a foot chase in Tottenham Court Road, and the suspect was arrested in the middle of the road. As we were dealing with a member of the public, a young man ran out. I thought, oh, God, no, he's not one of those going to try and grab a police officer. But as an off-duty PC, he came to help, and he went straight for the suspect's arm so we can get him into cuffs. This brings me nicely to the training side of policing. Over the years, I have had management and leadership training, regular first aid and trauma training, mental health training, spatial awareness training. I was also the SPOC, single point of contact for the specials for counter-terrorism at Colindale until I left. When specials were finally allowed to drive, I passed a theory and failed the basic driving check test. This hurt my pride more than anything, so I was in those days on the road as a rep. I thought I could drive. So I joined the RODO, which is part of ROSPA, similar to IAM, but we have to take our test every 3 years. It's a higher standard as well. It's gold, silver, bronze, so you have to stay up there. 6 months later, I took the police driving test again and passed with flying colours, and have been driving ever since. Anything from small panda cars up to the large public service vehicles, you know, the big white riot vans. I remained with ROSPA for 9 years as a driving advisor. Those big white riot vans are easy to drive, but I don't like them. It's a pain because you get one tiny scratch. You wouldn't believe the paperwork you have to do with that. By the way, if any of you have younger members of the family who you feel would benefit from some advanced lessons, ROSPA do not charge for lessons. They used to meet in Bushy on a Sunday morning, and a driving advisor would sit in the passenger seat of their car and show them ways to drive better and safer. And I remember with one girl, she'd had 2 or 3 accidents, and I was with her for about a year, taking her out every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. And yeah, she did pass the advanced test. And to me, I feel that if I can get one more driver who is better equipped for some of the madness you see on the roads these days, I feel I've done something. And though I never know how each shift or duty will turn out, I do work with a good bunch of people, and we do have each other's backs. Now, as an inspector, I can pass on my knowledge to the younger generation. It's frightening to think that some of the people who are joining the specials now, or even some of the sergeants, weren't even alive when I started. I was in Kentish Town Police Station a couple of weeks ago talking to one of the duty officers, sergeants, and we were chatting, and it turns out that she was just over 40. So I'm thinking, my God, I joined this before you were even born. She had a good laugh. That is a very brief introduction to being a police officer, a Jewish police officer in Barnet and beyond. So I've tried to keep it lighthearted. If any of you have any questions whatsoever, if you can open that to unmute them, please feel free. Anyone there?
Um, Stanley Russell, if you can go.
Yeah, good evening, Steve.
Good evening.
You may have covered this before. I didn't manage to tune in until 8:30, but I run the Colindale Appropriate Adult Panel. We look after detainees with mental health problems. Also, we cover drunks and detainees with drug problems, and we sit in on the police interview to make sure that they are properly treated and that they understand their rights. I've never come across a special in an interview. I've done 400 over the last 21 years. Do you ever get to, or did you ever get involved with interviewing people?
I did, but there's now what they call the CP case progression unit. We will arrest them, we'll do our paperwork. We then pass that on to the CPU, and it's normally their officers, which is why you may have seen it's the same people over a few occasions. We pass it on to them, and they're the ones who do all the interviews. In fact, when we had the arrest in Tottenham Court Road, myself and our officers did our statements, our forms, everything that we had to do. And then two of the regular officers from that unit will collate everything, interview the suspect, and then, if necessary, they're the ones that present the case to CPS for charging or not charging, as the case may be. That's probably why you haven't seen specials. But the only way, hang on 1 minute. The only way you would recognise a special is if on their uniform, I don't know if you can see, you've got that SC. Everything else is identical. The numbers, the uniform, the lot. So if you don't see an SC, it's a regular. And if you do see an SC, then it's a special. And that's the only way you can tell the difference. Years ago, we used to have special constabulary on the shoulders. But about, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago, there's a big hoo-ha. And they wanted us to be more integrated, which means we have the same mandatory training courses. So I have to do my officer safety training and first aid every 6 months. I have to go through a series of online training sessions. We're under the same disciplinary code, which means if we screw up, we come under we could be referred to the IOPC just like any regular. And that's why on duty, it's almost impossible, apart from that, to do a special from a regular.
Another question?
We have a question that came through from YouTube. It's from Ruth Benor. She said, good evening. Will we be seeing extra policing in Barnet that we've been asking for example, around schools on the Yomim Noraim?
There are always extra police around schools on Yomim Noraim. I used to organise when I was there, in conjunction with the senior SLT senior leadership team now, that they would have extra patrols and neighbourhood teams around the schools across normally the evenings of Rosh Hashanah, most of Yom Kippur, and less so the evenings and during the day for Sukkot, especially for Simchas Torah. Obviously, it's a political situation. I can't answer that question as such. I do know that they are concerned around the bigger shuls, such as Birley Close, Finchley, Dunstan Road, and so on and so forth. But like everything else, there's not enough police officers, thanks to Theresa May in 2010. There are not enough police officers. There's not enough resources, despite everything. So there will be police, there will be PCSAs, there will be the neighbourhood policing there. But should something happen, then they may or may not get called off. That's the point. But yeah, we do that. And I know around Purim, I have myself given up the number of times that, what's the one? Princess Park Avenue, PPA, Princess Park Avenue and Golders Green. is to be the epicenter of the teenagers throwing eggs and doing all sorts of stuff. And on many an occasion, I used to put our van, there was a regular van, because they knew what was going on. Not so much from the anti-Semitism, but from the Jews who were getting a bit too drunk, getting a bit too boisterous, and other things that were happening there. And on one occasion, I was in a car and we go around the various houses and we getting invited in at midnight at 1 a.m. It's not normal that I tend to have a turkey sandwich at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm poor, but hey, it's kosher. I'm not going to say no. So yeah, there are lots of police around. They know what's going on. A lot more these days. Policing is intelligence-led. The days of just seeing a policeman walking up the street is not that sort of common. And I know people say, oh, they should get out of their cars, but what's the point? Within the cars, you've got full computer systems. You can tell what's going on. Before I even stop a vehicle, I know who the owner of the vehicle is. I know who's insured on the vehicle before we've even done anything half the time.
Andrew and Barbara Sherling have a question, I think.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
2 questions. First one is, what made you become a special constable rather than a regular police officer? And the second one is, what do you feel about the fact that they're closing a lot of local police stations like Temple Fortune, Edgware, Hendon and Finchley?
The first question I'll answer, there's almost 2 parts. If you want the truth, or the one I usually give about helping the community. But when I was studying biochemistry, I was doing an experiment one afternoon with a colleague doing a similar experiment. He started before me. So he finished before me. So I said, Jerry, can I borrow your newspaper? In fact, I've still got 15 minutes to go before I've got to finish doing it. He said, yeah, of course you can. So I'm reading through the newspaper and there's an advert for specials. So I doodled my name and details and I took the paper home on the train. And then I came home and I looked at the paper one day and thought, oh, I'll send it off. And that basically was it. Then I was invited to West Hendon at the time for a chat with them. And that is honestly how I got into it. As regards your second part of the question, again, I totally agree that we need to focus more resources where they're needed. But as regards the estate, like Golders Green and Hendon and Golders Green, which is the Temple Fortune one, and Mill Hill, there are only a finite number of resources that can go round, and they have tried to put the neighbourhood teams in sort of local shopping centres and places. But I personally think it's going to backfire, because as we get more and more police officers and need to control more and more what's going on, they're going to run out of areas and run out of estates. In my day job, in emergency medical supplies, I work with numerous police forces up and down the country, Thames Valley, Kent, Sussex, Surrey, Cambridge, anything from frontline officers to the armed response and the CTSFOs, which is the counter-terrorism specialist firearms teams. They're the ones that wear grey rather than the black uniforms. And there will come a time when I think the thin blue line will get so thin that we're going to need to do something. But I don't have that much say in what they do with the estates, but I do agree that, you know, for financial reasons and balancing the books, there's going to come a time when I can't go any sort of thinner.
Can I ask you about the management? Can I ask you about the management structure? You say that you've gone from Barnet to Camden.
Yes.
They're all part of the Metropolitan Police. Is there any demarcation between them along the lines of county lines problems that you have outside London? And what is the relationship between the Metropolitan Police and just beyond there into Hertfordshire?
A healthy rivalry. I'll give you an example, or 2 examples. Within the Met, it started that some years ago there was a new local council bill or something. So all police areas work within the council boroughs, because in fact at Barnet we used to have Bournemouth, Pinner, Bushy, but that went to Hertfordshire. So within Northwest you've got Barnet, Brent and Harrow. Where I am, it's central north, you've got Camden and Islington. That doesn't mean that if something happens, you don't cross borders at all. We're not like in America where you stop at the state line. When I've done warrants vans, when I was at Colindale, I drove to Hertfordshire, I drove to Walthamstow, I drove into Camden. It makes no difference from that point of view. But the radios that we have in the control rooms, although they manage the whole of the Met, they try to keep it local so that we will only get calls for Camden and Islington. If we are travelling somewhere else to execute a warrant, we switch the radio to Walthamstow or to Enfield or to something like that. So what's the second question?
I was asking whether there's a problem between Greater London and...
Oh, county lines, yeah. There is. There's too much knife crime, too much gang culture, but there are specific gang units. There's a violent crime task force. Sorry, I have to bring about VCTF means. We tend to use acronyms and TLA, three-letter acronyms, all the time. But they are there. Sort of there's Trident, which is black on black gang crime. So you've got individual specific departments that are working on this. But what I have found is that through my day job, the county lines are affecting more the outlying, the Hertfordshires, Norfolk, Suffolk. They start in London, and we've had full training on organised gang crime as well. They start in London, but now they start to end up with more stabbings, whatever, in Norfolk, in Kent, because of the county lines, which is quite a bit of an issue over there, not so much here. So we in Camden, one of the top areas that we've got is drug dealing, drug offences, but of course these are the low-level people. We're trying to get to the high ones. But it's actually amazing how much intelligence you can pick up just chatting to some of these people, and quite often doing the automatic number plate recognition AMPR operations for traffic. You stop a car and it says, don't tell them anything, but find out who's driving it, who's in a vehicle, where they're going, or where they've been. So under Section 163 of the Road Traffic Act, we can stop any vehicle on the road. I'll tell you something about that in a minute. Any vehicle on the road to check the documents. So we stop the vehicle, we find out who's in it, we establish everything, and the wife goes, I want a piece of paper for that you stopped me. I said, madam, we're not stopping and searching you, we just stopped you under 163. And she goes on and on. So obviously she's been stopped before. And then we feed that intelligence back, which they can build up as a picture. Just before Christmas, we were doing traffic duty outside Camden Lock, near the bridge there. I don't know if you know that, sort of in Camden. And we saw a car on the mobile, and he admitted to us that he was shopping on Amazon. So while a colleague was writing out a ticket, there were two guys filming. And I went up and said, guys asked me, yeah, we're just filming. I said, that's fine. Goes on YouTube. Oh, look, stop and search. They stopped the vehicle. Oh, look, they're giving them a ticket now. It's just not even worth asking, because people will make up their own agendas of what they want to do. It's not stop and search. Now, I don't like these armchair critics that know, if they know all about the police, why don't they come and join us? If they know more than we do. No, come and join us, and we'll be more than happy to help them out.
Right, we have a question from Denise, Nicole, and Anthony Bird.
Yeah, my family. What do they want to know?
How do the hours required differ between police officers and specials?
A special, actually, that's a good question. Thank you, Denise. A special has to do a minimum 16 hours a month, which equates to, we round it up to 200 hours a year. Mostly I will work Saturday nights in winter or Sundays and evenings in summer, because obviously I can't go out if the shop goes out too late. Regulars would tend to do the equivalent of a 40-hour shift over early turn, late turn, night duty. So it could be something like 5 on, 4 off, or something like that. It varies from force to force. However, being specials, we haven't got the luxury of coming in the following day. So if you nick somebody on a Saturday night, you have to finish the paperwork before you can go home. And Denise will remember this. My wife is a very heavy sleeper, and I used to come in, and on Sunday morning she'd say, "What time do you get in?" It was always just after midnight. Until Nicole was born. "What time do you get in?" "Oh, just after midnight." And I was feeding Nicole at 2 o'clock and he still weren't here. So I couldn't get away with that one anymore. Or I'd park the car quietly, look up and see the light on in the nurse, what was the nursery? Think, "Oh, God, I'm in for it now." The latest I've come in from a Saturday night is about 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. So I've been on since 6 p.m. But the regulars can say, "No, I'm going to do that. I'll finish it tomorrow." We can't do that. I had an email from a colleague, not Jewish, who was on duty on Saturday, who finished 11 hours after he should have gone off because they arrested a couple of people. They then had to take one of them, I don't know the circumstances, as a hospital guard, which means the guy was injured, taken to hospital, and you have to have someone in there. I remember on a Saturday night, it was just before midnight, there was a collision in Temple Fortune Road. The chap was about 70. He'd been drink driving, he got nicked, we took him to Royal Free. I had to stay with him until the doctor had seen him and pronounced him fit to have a blood test taken. And then the blood test would be taken by the FME, the forensic medical examiner, the police doctor. The guy had prostate cancer, so he was walking backwards and forwards to the toilet all night, and it's very hot in that place. And I had my stab-proof vest and full uniform. It wasn't going to run anywhere, but I still had to stay with him. Anyway, there were 2 of us, and about 3 o'clock, having been drinking all evening to keep hydrated, I went to go to the toilet. And the nurse says, "Where are you going?" So I'm going to the toilet. "You can't use that one. That's for patients. Follow me. You can have the staff toilet." And that was in the Royal Free. But I had been 2 weeks ago. I spent 2 hours in UCH because one of my officers chasing after the suspect in Tottenham Court Road banged her knee. So I went in there and I said, "How long's the wait?" "Oh, about an hour." I said, "Come on, we're all on the same side." Fortunately, she was seen very quickly. Another officer from the same incident went back, and this was when there was a big demonstration in Parliament, Extinction Rebellion, I forget which. And I went up and I said, "Look, there's 3 of us in here. We're only halfway through our shift." "Yeah." And most of the other officers are out at Parliament, so we are short-staffed. Get him in a bit quicker. He was in and out of hospital in 20 minutes. We're all on the same side. Now, you can't do that off duty. Although I suppose I could dress up as in police uniform and go in there if I need, hopefully I won't. But we work with the police, the fire, the ambulance on numerous occasions, and the hospitals. We work with them and they work with us. So there you are.
Could I ask you about quarantining and COVID at the moment? If one policeman is in contact with somebody who is pinged or something like that, what happens to the rest of the station?
Yeah. Now, there's a question. The whole shift, or anyone in that shift that he was working with, is isolated. We had quite a few vans last year where one person on the van caught COVID. The whole van had to be isolated for 10 days. Briefings were taking place in the car park, not in the briefing room. You had to wear a mask in the station. And to quote one of the senior officers, "If I see anyone without a mask, there will be a very uncomfortable conversation, and it'll be uncomfortable for you, not for me." So yes, we had to wear that. We're provided with wipes, so every time you get in a vehicle, you wipe the steering wheel, the handles, the gear stick, or whatever. We've got masks, we've got alcohol gel, but there were very, very strained because all you need is 2 particular shifts to lose 8 or 9 people for 10 days, and there's nothing they could do about it. It's much better now, but that is why the police should have been, I do believe, higher up the list for getting vaccinated. Because yes, I know people talk about supermarket workers, but police, supermarket workers, firefighters, don't go right up to someone's house and end up talking to somebody in the kitchen or rolling around on the floor with them in close proximity, mask or no mask. I mean, the amount of gloves we must have gone through last year. I used to double glove up if I was doing anything. and then we're going to arrest somebody who breached his bail condition. And the guy was late 40s, lived in a flat in Colindale, and the regular officer said, look, can you two come with us, please? Because he may kick off. Yeah, fine. There were two female officers, myself and another male officer, and they went in there and they said, you know why I'm here? Read him his, you don't have to say anything, etc. And he says, oh, I got COVID, I've been coughing. No, have you been out? Oh, no, I haven't been out. She said, well, that's a lie, because we've got you on video harassing a person you're not supposed to be near. Oh, I've been coughing. At which point I thought, great, I'm going to have to search him. So I was a male officer. 2 pairs of gloves, mask. As soon as we came out, bin the gloves, bin the mask, plenty of alcohol gel. You know, we just didn't take a chance. But I do know of police officers that have gone down with it. But fortunately now, I would say all of them have been double vaccinated, but we still have to be careful. We have not been let off the hook. So when I'm on duty next week, I will still tell my officers that we should be wearing masks if we're coming in contact with the public. And again, it looks better on TV. Let's put it that way. Because you never know who's filming.
Right. Cameron, do you have another question there?
It wasn't actually a question as such, it's more of a comment.
Yeah,
Somebody has just posted, he's saying, as a FME, which is a police surgeon,
yep.
for 32 years, he said he takes issue with being called a police doctor because we work with the police, not for them. In fact, we are paid to be unpopular and say that someone is unfit for interview or detention.
I stand corrected. Over the last 40 years, we've had police surgeon, police doctor, FME, and all sorts of other terms. Totally agree. It's a bit like the custody sergeant. They can also say that someone's unfit to be interviewed or fit to be interviewed. But in a lot of police stations now, they do have, and including the Med, it's farmed out to a facilities management company where they have a healthcare professional who's normally the first port of call. But yes, the FME, Forensic Medical Examiner, I've had to call out on quite a few occasions. So fair enough. Apologies if that was if you were offended by that. But we couldn't do without.
Do people offend Jews and people from ethnic minorities more than mainstream policemen or not?
Not really. I think police get not offended, police get abused. All police get abused. There's one occasion where a woman came in to the station, and by her language, she's being quite racist about something. So the regular sergeant came out to deal with her. And the regular sergeant's family came from either Jamaica or somewhere around the West Indies. And we thought, great, let her deal with that one. I have been called everything, as I said, from Nazi to pig to this to that. But sometimes it's interesting. You can have a go back. We were at a pub fight. And somebody said that guy walking away was involved. So we went out and brought him back. And he said, no, I'm sorry. This was in Whetstone. I'm sorry, I was just trying to separate the parties. Have a look at the CCTV. I said, listen, mate, that's fine. Do you mind just standing here? My colleague will have a look at the CCTV. If there's nothing wrong, we'll take your details as a witness. Yeah, that's fine. 1 a.m. in the morning, a young chap comes up who's obviously had a few bevies. And he says to the chap, she shouldn't have to tell you anything. You're entitled to get a solicitor. Not even knowing what's going on. So I put my face straight into his and said, excuse me, mate, are you a qualified solicitor? He goes, no. So I won't tell you then what I said to him, but I was words was, why don't you go home and sober up? But in a bit more colourful language, at which point he turned around. It's just easier for, unfortunately, Asian and black police officers to get abused than it is for Jews. We went to arrest a woman in Hender's Corner of Nigerian origin. And myself, there is an Asian officer, a guy that is down the road from, I think he's from Nigeria or Uganda, and a couple of others. We were called rapists, the N-word, Birley was called a coconut. For those who don't know, that's black on the outside, white on the inside. We were after the woman, and the man there said it was his daughter in the bedroom who just come out of the shower. So I said to one of my female officers, just go and check it is the daughter and leave the door open. I don't care if she's got no clothes on, because if anything starts, I'm coming in to help you. The woman came out and said, no, it is a daughter. So the daughter comes out and says, oh, she was looking at me to check I was in this, you must be gay. And you just take it. It's not worth it. I've had it so many times. You think, if it's in the street and they start swearing and you warn them, you can do that on a Section 5 public order. But do you want the hassle? It just varies. But I am used to being insulted and abused, and some of my colleagues being assaulted as opposed to insulted. Not something that should happen, but it's something you have to expect with the job.
Yeah.
I think Viv has got a hand up.
Right. Viv, can you come in, please?
She's on mute.
Can you unmute, please, Viv?
I'm trying to.
Oh, yes,
There you go. We can hear you.
we can hear you.
Hi, Steve. I couldn't let the meeting go about without saying, how are you?
I'm fine for Alfie. Good God.
Yes, I didn't want you. You've changed as well.
So have you. It's a voice I recognise. How you doing? Viv was a special for how long?
Oh, God, a long time.
But you retired some years ago. Good God, yeah.
No, I became seriously ill, but actually I was asked. I worked in Barnet for a long time as a, what I said, I did used to say, as a yo-yo, going from Barnet to Boreham Wood.
From
You remember that?
Yes.
Every 2 minutes, Boreham Wood, there's a fight at the minicab office.
Down the high street on a
Cancelled.
Saturday night with the pubs and clubs.
So
Yeah,
in the end,
remember
I
it.
said to my colleague, I was a driver, I said, don't answer that radio, just leave it, we're going. Just ignore it.
We did have Bournemouth, Bushy.
Oh yeah, wasn't it? Oh,
What was the other one? There's another one up there.
Bushy had a little shed.
I know. But then when the new regulation, the new law came in, they got rid of all that to Hertfordshire, and we then had only the Barnet itself, and now Ben Harrow. And the Met also had parts of Surrey, parts of Kent on the outskirts, and lost all of that.
And then originally, and then I was working at Whetstone, but obviously everything
That's closed
goes
down as well.
to Colindale and everything else. But
Whetstone's closed.
I did something like you, actually, very similar. There was an advert in a paper, and I thought, oh, my last child has grown up, and I'll fill in the form, and I was called up.
Yeah.
And they
These
said,
days,
I got a letter straight away the next day. I guess I was a bit older, and they said, oh, yeah, you'll be good because you've got experience of life.
I have an officer in Camden, not Jewish, who's 69. He's retiring next year when he hits 70. He flies a plane, so he's got a private pilot's license, and the medical for that is even more stringent than for the police. He still takes the fitness test regularly, and he's still an active officer. So yes, whereas regular officers tend to retire after 30 odd years with a pension, specials are retiring. Basically, we either can't do it anymore, or other things, unfortunately, like with you, Viv, take over. And there's one police special in Harrow who's been doing it for over 50 years. Now, he's not so much front line anymore. A lot of it is sort of back office, but he still has to go through all the same procedures and processes that we all do.
Well, I joined, I guess maybe I was, I don't know, 40, something like that. And they said, you're very good. And also you're extremely fit. These people are half your age. I said, yes, I do work out. I play tennis and I dance 5 nights a week. Oh my God. And
one of the things now about, I mentioned during the talk that specials are not only integrated, but we do the same things as the regulars. About 3 years ago or 2 years ago, specials then have to take what's known as the job related fitness test, the JRFT. That is a bleep test. So you've got 15 meters, you start at one side, you run to the other, it bleeps, you run back again, it bleeps, and it gets quicker and quicker. The level for the police is 5.4. For some of the other units like firearms is 10.4. If you can't do that because one of my knees has gone, you then go onto a treadmill, and the treadmill will go at 6.2 kilometers an hour, 0 to 2 minutes. 3% is from 2 to 4 minutes. 6% is 4 to 6 minutes. 9% is 8. I can't remember, something like that. You are not allowed to touch the sides of the treadmill. You're not allowed to hold on to the top. Despite however much training you do, believe me, 10 minutes on nothing is a killer. The only thing keeping me going when I did that was the thought that if I don't do it this time, I've got to go through all over again in about 6 to 8 weeks. I did it.
That'll do your knee in.
No. If on the treadmill, you're just walking in a straight line, you're not running backwards and forwards.
Oh, right.
I had a support on my knee. But, you know, like if I'm down the gym, I'll hold on to the top or the sides. But I'm thinking, no. And the guy there was actually fantastic. Come on, you're nearly there. And that was what kept me going. I'm not coming back again. I'm not doing this for another year.
I was still working in Barnet, but while I was working in Barnet, being a driver, I was asked, could you start coming in with a van and whoever pick up in Colindale when the gang started the first time round, you know, in Hackney.
There's 2 areas in Barnet that are 3 areas are quite rough. One is Dulwich Valley in Barnet.
Oh, yeah, it's always been
One
terrible.
is Strawberry Fields in North Finchley. And the other, which is no surprise to anyone, is Graham Park. Now, they've done a hell of a lot with Graham Park, but you cannot, I mean, if you're going to end up with an estate like that and move people into it from other places, it's going to be a rough area. And the numerous times that you get the call on a Saturday night, November 8-1, are you single or double crewed? Right. Double. Oh, good. We've got a call for you at Graham Park. Or I remember one Saturday night getting a call to Strawberry Dulwich Valley estate, which is up at High Barnet, on fireworks day. We must have been there an hour and a half, just going from call to call on the same estate. Until the end, we thought, look, we've had enough of this place. Let's go. I'm not going to go into the details of the families that live there, but you see how the other half lives. On one occasion in Barnet, we went from a house or a flat in Burnt Oak of a family that had a 1-bar electric fire where the cable was getting frayed, to Bishop's Avenue with the potential suspects on, where the whole of this flat could have fitted into the kitchen in Bishop's Avenue. And this is what you have. People, it's an eye-opener. People in Barnet, Jews in Barnet, think of Golders Green, Hendon, Edgware, Finchley.
You remember, you know what was a nightmare? That before there was Section 4 and Section 4A and 5, what a nightmare. You've got a woman screaming domestic violence. But then when you get there, she's, don't touch him, I love him.
That is the standard triangle. You've got him, you've got her, and you've got the police. And we've all had all this training. The fact that you're coming in, that him and her, this is domestic violence, you've had an incident. Once the police come in to help the female against the male, we become the bad people. Now, on one occasion, we went to a warrant in Finsbury Park, a Colombian couple. We arrested him. He was fine. While we're down the station, we're talking to the team that's dealing with it, domestic violence unit, and they were showing us the photographs of all the injuries that she had when she was interviewed 2 days earlier. She was from Colombia, didn't speak a lot of English. So as far as she was concerned, he was her tormentor, her abuser, but equally, he was her meal ticket because he spoke English. And she wanted to withdraw the charges. And domestic violence is the only offence that the police can prosecute without a witness statement. It's got the evidence.
Yeah, when they bought.
I had a case of a pub fight or a nightclub fight where someone came up and said, look what he did to me. I said, do you want to give a statement? She says, no, go and arrest him. I said, I can't. If you're not going to give a statement and go to court, nothing I can do. But domestic violence is the only time you can do that.
Right, we're going to have to stop now because we've exceeded the time
That's fine.
Agreed. So this session will be available on the Edgware US YouTube channel, and you can find many of our other past sessions on the Edgware US YouTube channel. Our current program is on the website www.edgwareu.com. Our next session will be in 3 weeks' time on Tuesday, the 3rd of August, when, by the light of the silvery moon, David McCarthy, the Vice President of the International Al Jolson Society, will give a presentation on Al Jolson, the man and the legend. You ain't heard nothing yet. I would like to thank Steve for his talk tonight and for giving us an insight into the day-to-day work of a Jewish policeman. His behind-the-scenes stories illustrate the difficulties that the police work under, but also the satisfaction that they can get from their public service. Thank you very much.